First off, before the video truly begins, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you who've been here from the start, or who've been here from the start of the series, or those who are just tuning in, but especially those who have been here for a while, because I understand there are certain things that have gone on that might be viewed as annoying to other people, like how my computer broke, or how I was away for personal stuff, or just how inconsistent my upload schedule is. I appreciate everyone sticking around despite that. So, with that said, let's get into the recap. In Part 5.5, King Piccolo and the Pilaf gang went to the island of the Eternal Phoenixes to take one of the ruler's feathers. They fought with her, and while they weren't able to outright defeat her at first, once King Piccolo was able to regain his youth with one of her feathers, it was a wash. They were able to storm King Furry's castle at night to defeat all the military opposition and kill him, thus making King Piccolo the new ruler of Earth. That also said, let's get back into the story. King Piccolo sits atop his demonic throne, pushed up against the hole in King Furry's castle. Well, King Piccolo's castle. All in all, it still feels weird thinking about it that way after so long trapped in that infernal rice cooker. But with the whole world in the palm of his hand, it's no longer a concern. Let's take a look at the Dragon Team's perspective. While King Piccolo and the Pilaf gang were on their little Phoenix adventure, they were out there gathering the Dragon Balls. They succeeded in finding them all, however they refrained from making a wish on them, seeing as King Piccolo was still alive. They've made the executive decision to save them for when he's been resealed or killed. They went to rest at some safe houses in the middle of nowhere with the Tenkaichi Budokai staff. Upon waking up, since Yamcha, Bulma, and Puar elected to stay in the same safe house together, while Yamcha's brewing some coffee, Bulma would turn on the morning news. An innocuous part of an innocent morning ritual. And yet, they'd be caught off guard at the sight before them. Bulma alerts Yamcha to the news. King Furry's castle has been taken over in the middle of the night. So many military soldiers had been wiped out. Good Kami, that's just awful. Who did it? They have a sneaking suspicion already, but they'd find out for sure pretty soon after. The feed is hijacked by a green man with the mark of the demon upon his clothes. From off camera, someone hands him a lozenge, which he puts in his mouth, chomps down on, and swallows, all while looking directly at the camera. Next, he clears his throat and pulls out a lined index note. Originally, I wrote him a whole speech, but this video is long-winded enough. Basically, he insults the human viewers of the broadcast and mocks them. The date is the 9th of May, 753, at the time of 8:53 a.m. He announces how every military soldier who fought them was easily killed, by the Pilaf gang no less. If they could do it, imagine what he'd have done. He only laments not recording it, but you know what footage they do have? Directly from King Furry's office cameras, they have footage of him getting murked. And then he shows it. Piccolo has absolutely zero concern over who may be watching at this time. In fact, as Bulma goes to change the channel, she horrifyingly discovers that this is on all of them right now. King Piccolo has completely taken over cable TV. She switches over to some public broadcast stuff, and oh, the humanity, it's on there too. On live TV, anyone who has theirs on is forced to see the swift and pre-recorded execution of King Furry. Once he and his desk are tossed out the wall, it switches back to King Piccolo. King Piccolo explains how he was threatened with a nuclear bomb since the CCTV footage didn't have any audio. He laughs about that fact. He also heard about how Jackie Chun destroyed the moon, and he was even awake to watch the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai on pay-per-view. And he saw Toribot beat Jackie, which he finds crazy because that's just some random manga artist from Penguin Village. Not only did Toribot beat Jackie, but he also killed 5 of his children. King Piccolo's children, not Toribot's children, because Toribot doesn't have any children. First, it was his 3 sons, Tambourine, Cymbal, and Drum. Then it was his daughter Yuka, and then it was his son Obo. And Obo was born deformed. Yeah, he had 4 eyes and no mouth. This is an attempt by King Piccolo to get people against Toribot, but considering the destruction wrought by King Piccolo and the fact he took over the world, Most people really wouldn't care, especially considering how his children would likely be serving him. And King Piccolo does go on to state that he's actually given birth to 5 more children in order to fight Toribot, so that basically proves he's just using them as weapons to literally anyone who can comprehend a basic sentence. What I'm saying is that people who could hypothetically get mad at Toribot over what he did are basically illiterate or bootlickers, even though King Piccolo doesn't have boots, he just has shoes, but you get what I mean. King Piccolo challenges Toribot to arrive at exactly 11 a.m. on the dot to fight each and every single one of them to the death, and if he and his bunch win, then he gets to keep his control over Earth. If Toribot wins, then, well, it doesn't really matter because King Piccolo doesn't even acknowledge the idea it could be a real possibility. Of course, on the inside, he knows that it's the most likely option, which is why he gave all that birth, and why, when Toribot arrives, they'll just jump him. He also says Toribot isn't allowed to bring anyone else with, which is really, really disadvantageous to Toribot, but really it's the only thing he can do because King Piccolo also threatens to blow up West City if his demands are not met. At this point, Bulma and Yamcha are freaking out. Just when they felt they could rest, suddenly Earth's government is under siege. Toribot can't fight them alone, can he? 5 demons plus King Piccolo himself plus the Pilaf gang? Okay, well, the Pilaf gang's not gonna do anything, but still. Oh, and Piano? It's just too far! Piano also isn't gonna do anything, but that's not the point! King Piccolo has all of Earth's military on his side, too. Meanwhile, in Toribot's safe house, he'd have bunked with Yajirobe. In the same house, to be clear, not the same bed. Yajirobe would want his own bed, and I'm honestly not sure if Toribot even sleeps or not. Regardless of that, Toribot and Yajirobe are both mortified by this revelation. Even Yajirobe's bear is afraid, which just goes to show how terrifying the situation really is. So, what's Toribot supposed to do then? It seems like the only thing that can be done is to face the situation head on. So if that's what he has to do, then so be it. Toribot, with his pencil, begins to prepare as many items for the battle as possible. First, he'd start out with his very own copy of the power pole. Why? Well, because he already has one in the drawing, so why not add it into the story? After the creation of the power pole, he'd create a couple more shields just in case. These would be more durable than the ones he used against Yuka, since these two would be finished. It's also a lot easier to draw something when you're stationary versus when you're moving. Next, Toribot draws up a bundle of grenades. They aren't really meant to do damage, but they can be good for a diversion. And whatever little damage they might deal, if any, is still better than nothing. Then we'll throw in some graphene shurikens as well, for good measure, just to give the demons something to waste their energy avoiding. Toribot would also draw himself up a copy of Yajirobe's sword as well, though it's sort of modified because instead of making it how it is, he remakes it using the material he's made of. It would also be kind of useful for him if he had some sort of long-ranged weaponry too, so he'd draw himself a sniper rifle as well. While the rifle itself is nothing special, its bullets would be. He'd draw himself several clips full of bullets made of the same alloy he is too. You might be wondering why Toribot doesn't just try to make himself some kind of strength potion, or health potion, or invisibility potion even. And you know what? That's a good question, A for effort, if you thought that, but that doesn't exactly work. He's a robot, so he can't actually ingest the contents of the potion, which would remove the point of it. Although, most importantly, Toribot would take his pencil along with him. Just in case he needs it for whatever reason, he will have it on him. Once Toribot's done with his weaponry, he'd start to strategize a battle plan alongside Master Roshi. While Roshi wouldn't be able to come with him, he's still an expert of battle and very wise. Toribot also takes along a copy of Yamcha's ship, which he drew up himself, to pilot towards the king's castle. Kinda crazy, but at least he won't be wasting an already owned ship or anything. By the time he's done with his strategy, as well as making all the items, it's 10-ish. So before he goes, just in case something goes wrong, he'd like to say goodbye to everyone he met. He'd say thank you to Goku, for so willingly accepting him into his friend group and for teaching him martial arts and for giving him the drive to protect the innocent. He also thanks Roshi for teaching him the turtle school style, as well as training him and strategizing with him. He turns to Krillin and Yamcha, thanking them for training alongside him and pushing him to better himself. He speaks to Bulma, thanking her for granting him the power batteries that he was able to store his gains within. He doesn't know Bora that well, but he thanks Bora for venturing up to Korin's tower and for his loyalty to his people and to Korin. Yajirobe expects to get thanked too. Toribot doesn't really know anything about him, but for what it's worth, it was kind of him to let Toribot copy his sword. That's satisfying enough for Yajirobe, so he accepts that. Armed to the teeth, the Dragon Team wish Toribot luck as he leaves them at the safe houses. The fate of the world, for now, rests on his shoulders. Or, that's what they think anyway. Toribot is not the first to arrive to confront King Piccolo or his new children. At 10:30 a.m., the members of the Crane School land their ship on a mountain nearby the castle. Shen, Tien, and Chaozu are all prepared to do whatever necessary to defeat the demon threat by any means necessary. We don't exactly know Shen's power level, but I honestly feel he's somewhere between Tien and Chaozu, both in terms of abilities and strength. He has all their abilities, and he's stronger than Chaozu, but not as strong as Tien. I do feel like Chaozu's psychic powers are related to the Crane School rather than a Chaozu-specific thing, though, so Shen has those too. Upon arrival, they'd be registered by CCTV cameras, as well as the fighter jets patrolling the castle. As such, they get targeted by a fleet of those said jets. Chaozu and Shen combine their psychic abilities to destroy the fighter jets by smashing them into each other. While Toribot probably won't be so comfortable killing regular military fighters like that, Shen doesn't really have those problems, especially if they're serving a demon like King Piccolo. I also feel like Chaozu will just do whatever Shen or Tien say, but with that fleet of fighter jets taken out, the explosions would surely attract some attention. Thus, the Crane School meets with even greater resistance. Another fleet of fighter jets rushes in, while tanks roll in on the ground as well. Shen and Chaozu use their abilities on the jets again, but instead of slamming them together, they send the aircrafts pivoting down into the tanks, wiping out both vehicles. There were more tanks than jets though, so they move in closer to finish the rest. The tanks fire out their anti-armor shots, but luckily for the Crane School, they don't have any armor. Oh, that's not how that works? Okay. Seriously though, Shen and Chaozu stop the shots midair and return them to sender, destroying their opposition. Ground soldiers get sent in too, but at that point, if the others wouldn't get anything done, they serve no shot. Tien floats up into the air, and as they open fire on him, whatever hits him successfully just bounces off. He puts his hands together in a triangular shape, with a square wave of ki coming out, eviscerating each and every soldier. They do encounter more opposition on the way, but what am I going to tell you that you don't already know? They defeat them with ease. When the three of them arrive at the castle walls, they wait for King Piccolo to appear, but instead of King Piccolo, they'd get another demon. This one must have been born not too long ago, during the night or maybe even a little before the siege. He's wearing red and yellow. His name is Gong. Gongs were originally an Indonesian instrument, though these days they're most associated with Japan. His design is kind of inspired by Hulk Hogan, and he has a similar attitude as well. He thinks that everything he's doing is good, when in reality he's evil. Very evil. And he's serving evil. Because, Hulk Hogan doesn't really like certain types of people, and we don't approve of discrimination on this channel. And, don't ask Gong what he thinks about the human race, because you're not gonna get a savory answer. Anyway, his power level is 220, so he's on par with old King Piccolo, as well as Cannon Drum and Oboe. Gong introduces himself to the three martial artists before him. He'd go on this long speech about how humans are an inferior species or something, something Hulk Hogan would say. Shen and Tien don't care about his speech, and Chaozu is listening, but it's not because he agrees, he just wanted to be considerate. Shen lifts his hand, using the psychic power to stop Gong from talking anymore. The demon Namekian furrows his brow at this, and then becomes violently angry. He rushes towards Shen and kicks him to the ground. Tien and Chaozu are startled by this, but quickly jump in to help their master. Chaozu freezes Gong before he can make any more movements towards Shen, while Tien fires out a Doranpa. It hits Gong through the back, but not in any vital areas. Still, that's just a little bit of energy he'd have to use up to regenerate. But he can't. He's frozen. Shen, on the ground, slowly regains his bearings. He lifts his hands up, pointer finger outward, and fires a Dodon paw of his own through Gong's stomach. All Gong can do for now is react, but Chaozu can't keep him back much longer without straining himself. He has to let go of the psychic hold. Gong still falls forward, affected by the attacks. Gong rolls over onto his back. Even with the warnings his father gave him about those martial artists, he didn't expect they'd be able to deal such damage to him. He's definitely still in the fight. He has an abundance of energy left, but still, being pierced through the back and stomach has gotta be painful. Purple blood stains his sweater through his wounds. It serves only to motivate him to get back up. Gong hops back up. Alright. If he has to use this technique so early in the battle, so be it. He spreads his arms out and he's in a powering up position. Odd, because people don't usually power up this early into the series. But sure enough, he is. Not just that, his aura. Look at it. It's yellow on the inside and red on the out. Does he have Kaioken or something? What? No. No. Obviously not. No. No! But this is a technique inspired by Bora's Bear Bash, which King Piccolo was able to witness through Laylee's eyes. He saw how Bora tackled Pilaf's mech with that bear aura, and he figured he should incorporate something like that into one of his children. But since demon Namekians don't really have souls necessarily, Gong doesn't really have any spirit animal to appear by his side. This technique is dubbed gonging out. It's also partially inspired by how Hulk Hogan will Hulk out and start completely no-selling his opponent's offense. Gonging out increases Gong's attacking and defensive power, but he gets a little bit stupider, and every other stat stays the same. Gong runs at Shen again, but he gets caught just in time to get put back in the psychic hold. Tien and Chaozu blast at Gong's legs with Dodon paws. Shen lets go of the hold, only to get rocked to the ground with a punch to the face. He thought for sure that Gong would fall to the ground again, but it's like he can't even feel the pain. Tien rockets forward to meet Gong, hitting him with a kick to the face. He takes the kick head on, his head only slightly budging. Then he grabs Tien's ankle with his hand, turning his head to meet Tien with a smile. Tien punches Gong in the face, with absolutely no effect. Tien uses a solar flare on Gong, blinding him. He quickly tosses Tien aside with the grip on his ankle. He closes his eyes to try and mitigate the pain. His aura diminishes, instead surrounding his leg. Gong jumps into the air and comes down, hitting Tien with a leg drop. But suddenly, Chaozu flies towards Gong, hitting him with a full power punch to the back of his head. With Gong's aura dispersed, he feels the full effects of this one, being pushed back down onto his back. Chaozu comes over to help Tien up, floating in the air while Tien leans over his body. He's able to help Tien stand again. While Tien is standing, he puts his hands together in a triangular shape again, standing over Gong.
Oh, that's a Dora shit!
Yeah. Gong's head pops like a watermelon stuffed with dynamite. What's on screen is a much tamer version of the description because it's just that explosion PNG again, I'm pretty sure. So, okay then. With Gong out of the way, surely they're ready to face King Piccolo, right? Right? Oh, I guess not, because now there's this little shirtless demon running around. This guy's name is Agogo. A-G-O-G-O. And Agogo is an idiophone instrument from Yoruba. This guy is basically a boxer, I guess. I don't know, I thought he should have had some kind of distinguishable feature. His power level is also only 220, but he's pretty fast, and like I said, he's a boxer, so that kind of makes up for it. Agogo runs in and hits Tien with a jab to the jaw. At this point, they basically get into an MMA match. I know boxing and MMA are kind of different, but, you know, it's a very close quarters fight. Lots of grappling going on, punches to the head, of course. Maybe they need to check Tien for CTE after this. All things considered, since Agogo's special ability is just being able to box, it's really not that good. He's stronger than Tien, Shen, or Chaozu, but he's still wearing gloves like a doofus. Chaozu freezes Agogo, with Tien firing a tri-beam at him too. Alright, so now we're gonna see King Piccolo come out, right? Oh great, it's just some buff guy. Huh? Yeah, their next opponent is Bach. He's buff, tall, and has a horn on his head. A Bach is a Korean woodclapper instrument. I don't know why he's wearing jeans. Someone should tell him to wear something normal. Bach quickly shows off the usage of his horn, because as he's walking toward Tien and Chaozu, he fires out a bolt of lightning through its tip. Tien has to jump around to dodge as more and more lightning shoots out. Chaozu is able to take Bach's distraction as the chance to psychically lift a rock and bash it against his head. Sheesh, I guess we're gonna have to check him for CTE too. It connects to the forehead of Bach, breaking and causing him to start bleeding a little bit. Chaozu quickly realizes his mistake as Bach turns his head to him and begins shooting at him instead. Even then, with both students distracting Bach, Shen is finally able to get back into the battle. From behind, he wraps his arm around Bach's neck, trying to choke him out. Bach hits him with elbows to the stomach to try and shake him off, but Shen won't budge. He's keeping on every bit of pressure he can to Bach's neck, just trying to weaken him as much as possible. Chaozu quickly puts the lock back onto Bach as well, causing his resistance to grow stagnant. Shen joins him in this, applying the psychic connection to his arms to keep them locked in place against Bach's neck. It takes a full-on minute and a half, but Bach is no more. Who expected it to be such a wipe from the Crane School? Bach's power level was 230, but with the power of jumping people, the Crane School has pulled through. But they're not uninjured either. Tien's pretty worn down in terms of body and energy. Shen's in a bit of pain. Chaozu's fine, but he's starting to wear down in terms of energy. But their next opponents seem effectively immune to being jumped. Not with the numbers they're facing. This is a set of twins. The tall one is named Aore, and the jester is named Dion. Har har.
Slip like Freudian, your first and last step to playing yourself like accordion.
Aore quickly runs in to deal with Shen, pulling him off of Bach and tossing him aside. He puts his arms on Bach's shoulders, channeling lightning through them. If he's right about this, then... Yes! Yes, dear Deborah, yes! Bach has been revived. Obviously, me personally, I'm not that excited about it, but Aore is. If you're familiar with the usage of electric shocks to reactivate brain activity in deceased patients, this is essentially the same principle. And he'd only been without air for maybe 3 minutes, so all things considered, especially considering the healing rate of demon Namekians, he's probably going to recover pretty good for someone who died. And Aore would love to revive Gong and Agogo too, but the whole problem is, with their whole heads exploded, meaning without their brains, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Still, it's 3-on-3 now. Aore tells Bach to go fight the Triclops, since he got killed by that old guy. Aore can handle Shen himself. Bach thanks Aore for reviving him and agrees, going off to face Tien. Aore and Shen begin their face-off. If you think about it, these 6 are really similar to each other. Aore and Shen are both the tall, smart ones, while Bach and Tien are the strongest, and Dion and Chaozu are both small with cool techniques. But the demons definitely have the advantage now. Aore proves that as he outspeeds and outpowers Shen with ease. Aore hits him with a volley of blows to the head and chest, as well as knees to the stomach. It doesn't take long for Shen to fall. With him practically defeated, Aore hits him with a super kick to the head to knock him out. But not kill him, not yet. He needs to make sure that Bach is okay. But let's switch to Dion and Chaozu for now. Dion's power level is only 205, and he's pretty diminutive compared to his siblings, but he's still got some tricks up his sleeve. Chaozu flies around attacking Dion with Dodon paws like he did to Goku in Part 3. Dion's counter to this is to use illusions. Using his ki, he basically creates advanced afterimages of himself. They're the same as normal afterimages, but they move around. They can't do anything else though, so they're not that OP. The illusions cause Chaozu to keep missing Dodon paws on Dion. Chaozu quickly turns to using his Psychic Hold technique on Dion, and that actually causes the afterimages to disappear. They're non-corporeal beings after all, and that does keep Dion in place for a bit. He floats down to Dion, but being careful to keep his hands in place and keep him frozen. Once he's next to Dion, he unfreezes him to shoot him with a Dodon paw to the throat. Dion whips around, hitting Chaozu with a roundhouse kick to knock him away. He regenerates his throat while he has the opportunity. Still, that was kind of dangerous. Chaozu gets knocked to the ground, but he propels himself upward again. Chaozu is the most intact fighter here, and he'll use everything he has to keep his allies safe. He flies back over to Dion, dodging lightning as he goes, hitting him with a headbutt to the stomach. Dion recoils in pain, stopping his attacks. Chaozu then hits him with a barrage of punches, followed by 2 Dodon paws through the stomach. Chaozu won't lay up there though, and he continues firing away with punches, until Dion knees him in the face. He grabs Chaozu's shoulders and tosses him up into the air. Then, 2 bolts of thunder from his hands hit Chaozu, and... What? It's the Thundershock Surprise! What? No, really, what? Yeah, this is another imitation technique. King Piccolo gave this to Dion after seeing it from Obo's perspective. We could see quickly, though, that this version is incomplete. It's blue instead of yellow, and it doesn't seem to hurt nearly as much either. But Chaozu can't move, and that was the intention. For all intents and purposes, it was basically just to paralyze people. But when Dion puts his hands together, the attack implodes, causing Chaozu to plummet to the ground. Dion approaches Chaozu, charging lightning up in his hands. Chaozu rolls onto his back, witnessing Dion's approach. He flies up, forcing Dion to use his lightning attacks. But Chaozu tries to see if he can take a different approach to this battle. Rather than freeze Dion, he'd freeze the lightning. He converges the bolts together into one bigger bolt. Dion recoils in shock, but that's not the only shock he'd feel, as Chaozu drives the massive bolt through his heart. That's not the death sentence, but what follows is, because Chaozu flies behind Dion while he's staggering to the ground and wraps his arms around the back of his neck. Not to strangle him like with Shen, but to get a better positioning. Hanging on to Dion with his free hand, Chaozu puts his pointer finger out, shooting a Dodon paw through the back of his head. More specifically, through his brain. With Dion seemingly defeated, Chaozu is intent on helping Tien. Speaking of, let's see what he's been up to. Tien is definitely the safest opponent for Bach to fight. Tien has absolutely no psychic techniques, and he's already been worn down. It's safe to say that Bach could just run through him at this point. He knocks Tien down repeatedly, not allowing him to get in any offense. But when he drags Tien back up, Tien hits him with a headbutt to the already damaged head. It's not anything serious, but it hurts, and a lot. With Bach open, Tien puts his hands to the side of his head, waiting for Bach to open his eyes back up. When he does, Tien uses the solar flare, blinding him. Then he uses a tri-beam to the chest. Bach throws out a punch, which is quickly ducked under. Tien hits him with a specific jab to the neck, hitting him right on one of his pressure points. Truth be told, Tien wasn't sure if that would work or not, but it was worth a try, and it succeeded, albeit not to the extent it would on a human. Bach has been temporarily paralyzed. We can see from Tao, and for the origins of the Crane School style, that these techniques specialize in assassination. And with Tao using special pressure point techniques on General Blue in canon, it's not super outlandish to say anybody else would know them. But while Bach is locked in place, Aore flies in, hitting Tien with a kick to the neck and knocking him down. Tien rolls over himself. Since Bach can't see, he's just gonna sit this one out. Also, Aore doesn't have any cool key abilities, just flight. That's all he can do with it. But still, 2-on-1, with both opponents stronger than you, even if one of them is blind, is not good odds. Aore absolutely lays the beat down on him. But just as Aore thinks he's ready to finish off Tien, Chaozu slams into him from his side, and Aore goes flying off to the side. Chaozu addresses Tien. He says that Tien doesn't have to fight anymore. He can take care of it. The battle's almost over. Tien refuses, going back to fighting the blinded Bach. Chaozu flies in towards Aore again, kicking him in the chin. He circles around, putting both his arms around one of Aore's, lifting him up into the sky. Here's a little fact about Aore. He's deathly afraid of heights. And you know what? Me too, buddy. Fist bump. He kicks and screams as Chaozu carries him around, but Chaozu won't let go. Chaozu starts freaking out, causing him to drop Aore. Unintentionally, that actually does a lot of damage. When Aore comes crashing down, he'd have his bones jutting out of his body. And of course that goes on the assumption that Namekians even have bones. Something that sucks about this injury is that if he does try to regenerate it, what if it regenerates wrong? Shockingly though, someone actually comes to his aid. It's his brother, Dion. Dion's brain wasn't fully destroyed in the Dodon Paw, although he's certainly not all there mentally. Most people with holes in their brains aren't. So, yeah, here's Lobotomite Dion. Lobotomite Dion surrounds himself and Aore with dozens of afterimages. But while it would be easy for Chaozu to remove them, a sudden shot ringing out causes them to dissipate. The clock has struck 11. Out from the distance, Toribot has finally arrived, hitting Dion in the neck with the bullet from his sniper rifle. The loss of focus specifically is what caused him to drop the illusions. He is not dead. Dion closes his eyes, clutching the wound. It's not awful, like he was hit in the neck with a rock. The reason it does so much is because, again, the bullet was made of the same material Toribot is. Certainly not indestructible, but pretty tough. However, Dion can hear Toribot ruffling around in the bushes. He points his hand out towards him from far, far away, firing out a bolt of lightning. Toribot reflects it with his shield, swiping the bolt into the air. At that point, he bursts into his full power for just a moment, running in to hit Dion with a massive punch to the face. Upon contact with his fist, Dion's head completely melts into a puddle of green and purple goo, like what Goku did to Drum and Cannon, but worse. Aore's already injured, so he's not going to do much either. He tries his hand at using some lightning, but Toribot reflects it with his shield while he digs around in his capsule case for something useful. And upon looking, he finds the little purple capsule. Ah, right, the notepad document he has open in his brain says that has the sword in it. While Toribot knows the Demon Clan doesn't deserve to live, this guy's clearly suffering with his legs all broken and bones sticking out through them. Toribot definitely isn't gonna heal this guy to fight him either, so the best thing he can do is finish him off quick. And that's exactly what Toribot does. He rushes over to Aore, hitting him with the sword and slicing through his head. With his brain cut in half, yeah, no, he ain't coming back from that. Tien's still fighting Bach in the background, although Tien's winning. Toribot recognizes that guy and Chaozu from the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai. Not that old guy, but given their outfits, they must be related. Toribot comes over and talks to Tien while he's landing punches to the still blinded Bach. Tien's kind of passive-aggressive to Toribot here, considering they're from rival schools. Toribot tries not to pay much attention to that. Those Crane School folks can't be that bad if they're willing to put their lives on the line against King Piccolo. Then he remembers what Tien did to Krillin. Okay, yeah, it'd be preferable if he never saw those guys again. But he'd offer to kill Bach for Tien. Tien rejects the offer, instead electing to shoot yet another tri-beam, popping Bach's head. Toribot would sigh if he could, but instead he turns around to go make his way up the tower. Tien tells him to wait first. What? Well, he was just gonna say, maybe the Turtle School isn't that bad if they're willing to fight the demons like this. That's confusing to Toribot. Was Tien under the impression they'd be pro-demon? No, but Shen told them the Turtle School members would be too cowardly to fight King Piccolo. But considering Toribot's here, even despite the perceived odds, maybe their bunch isn't that bad. Tien goes on to apologize for what he did to Krillin. He could have done a lot worse, of course, but that's not the point. Hurting him like that was wrong. Nobody won, and it was a stupid decision. He doesn't forgive Tien for this, but they're on a better standing now. And even then, forgiveness is Krillin's decision to make. He'll ask Krillin about it later, but for now he has business to attend to. Toribot does lower his power before venturing over to the tower. Not because he wants to get his ass beat, but truth be told, after using up all that power with that explosion, his battery's been acting kinda wacky. Some kind of weird technological thing. Toribot doesn't really understand it. Well, it should be fine. He only has to fight one person anyway, so should be a wash. That is, what he thinks until the three separated Pilaf mechs meet him on the penultimate floor. Toribot ruffles through his case, looking for something to take them out. He'd have already put up the sword. Why not try something else? Yeah, Pilaf's mech should be easiest to take out. Seems like if he just hit it one time, right on the head... Oh, the Pilaf gang are actually surrendering to him. Yeah, Shu is the first person to come forward and say it. He makes his mech bow to Toribot. Mai follows suit. Pilaf... No, he's not bowing down to that little robot man, but he'd really appreciate the help. Pilaf explains why they're standing down, with some help from Mai and Shu. They've realized that to King Piccolo, they're utterly replaceable, and once King Piccolo has his fill of them, he'll just ice them too. So if they're gonna go out, they might as well do it by the side of someone with similar goals. Well, that's good, but they don't really have any use for Toribot. Unless He decides to hand over his grenades to the Pilaf gang, trusting deep within his heart, metaphorical heart, that they'll use the grenades for good. They sounded like they were telling the truth, but if they aren't, if it's all a trap, then he can counter them. But for now, he'll trust them, and they'll just make their way to the throne room. As they reach the final floor, Mai's mech pries open the door. Toribot steps out, followed by Pilaf, folled by Shu, and then followed by Mai herself. Something they notice is a distinct lack of King Piccolo, as well as a hole in the ceiling. Yeah, no, obviously he fled up there. Toribot ruffles through his capsules, taking out the orange one to pull out his power pole. Using the pole, he extends it through the hole in the ceiling. Grabbing on with both hands, he climbs up through the hole. When he's on the roof, he can't find King Piccolo, until he looks off to the distance, where King Piccolo is about 20 to 30 feet away. Toribot has one idea, but it might not be an incredible one. He goes back to his full power, going back to the farthest edge of the roof to gain as much room as possible. And then he dashes from the edge all the way to the other and jumps off, lunging towards King Piccolo. The shocking speed allows Toribot to land directly on King Piccolo's back. Toribot desperately grasps onto his back and his clothes for any kind of support. King Piccolo repeatedly elbows Toribot in the face, denting it. But that doesn't matter. He'll take as much damage as he has to, but right now, he'll do everything it takes to keep this monster from escaping. Because if he did, what would he do? Turn over a new leaf? Of course not. He'll just scamper off to some cave and start a whole new army. Toribot cannot let that happen. Toribot locks his arms around King Piccolo's. With every ounce of force he can muster, he'd keep himself attached to King Piccolo. All things considered, the hold on him he has is actually kind of painful. He's at a power of 1003 right now, after all. The other 5 points had dropped off between the fights he'd been in the past couple of days. But what can he even do right now? With both arms locked around King Piccolo, with him needing to prevent the demon's escape, how can he stop him? There is one thing he could do. The same thing he did to tambourine, cymbal, and drum. If he allowed that power to fully take over, to completely surge through his body, not only would it shred King Piccolo to bits, but it would also spell his demise. All the same, it has to be done. The consequences are too great. The monster is too evil, and everyone in the world, even his own minions, have turned against him. King Piccolo can just swear. He hears this faintest little whirring sound. What is that? Oh, and he feels the temperature rise too. He turns his head back to see Toribot with a golden glow around himself. Oh. King Piccolo, recognizing this from Drum's vision, immediately starts freaking out. He does everything he can to get Toribot off of him. He shoots repeated eye lasers to Toribot's arm, but all that manages to do is spew molten metal at him. There's no other choice. If he can't unlock himself, he'll just have to rebirth into a new vessel. King Piccolo turns his head upward while Toribot's still seconds away from exploding his battery. 10. King Piccolo's throat starts bulging. 9. He starts hacking and coughing like a madman. 8. Some large white object seems to be making its way out of his mouth. 7. King Piccolo heaves, trying to remove the egg. 6. The egg dislodges, now firmly stuck in his throat. 5. King Piccolo closes his eyes, concentrating. 4. King Piccolo imbues every last ounce of his memory he can into the boy. 3. King Piccolo then grants him his memories. 2. King Piccolo grants the boy his soul. 1. King Piccolo launches the egg from his mouth, kilometers into the distance. 0. The battery explodes. Every little ounce of King Piccolo's body, his clothes, everything he has, is reduced to atoms. Toribot, back at his power level of 8, is rapidly plummeting to the ground. Toribot thinks back upon his life. All those schemes he'd been pulling in Penguin Village, the times he'd been beaten up for them, yeah, it was justified. But then he thinks back to that day, where he saw those kids at knife point. Goku and Aore. That blonde shirtless man threatening to cut their throats open. That rock he threw to distract General Blue. The way Aore just beat his ass after that. She was always a pretty tough kid. Who knows where that blue guy's body is now anyway? Then he thinks back to his time with Goku. When he joined Goku on his journey, when they'd met Bora and Appa, when they fought Tao, when they trained to fight Tao again, when they fought Tao again, when Bora killed him. He thinks back to joining the Turtle School, the training he did with Krillin, Yamcha, and Roshi, his fights at the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai, his fight with Tambourine, his fight against Tambourine, Cymbal, and Drum, blowing himself up for the first time, fighting Yuka and Oppo, that quest for the Dragon Balls they went on yesterday, his planning for this battle, and then the battle itself. Truth be told, he'd have been happier if he'd gotten to fight all the demons himself, but it was good work for those Crane School guys to take care of them for him. He got to make a change in people's lives. He was also the one to get Roshi to train again, let's not forget that. He was also able to save Roshi from death against Obo. His works, according to his editor, changed thousands of people's lives. Too bad they weren't getting a proper pay cut from that, greedy manga publications. But the effect he's had on this world has been bigger than he ever expected. And this being the end, he didn't do too bad for himself. Toribot closes his eyes seemingly for the last time. He knows that a fall from this high up would completely destroy his motherboard. Thus, he wouldn't be able to draw anything again. He'd be inoperable. So, goodbye world. He'll miss you all. But he stops hearing the wind. Is he dead? Well, he didn't hear a crash. Toribot opens his eyes. Okay, he can't see anything that abnormal. But he can hear Chaozu panting and straining as much as he can while he tries to keep him in place. But that's not enough. Toribot falls to the ground. But oh well, he was only 10 feet in the air that time. So when he does fall, it's pretty much harmless. And you know, even with Toribot accepting what he thought would be his death, he's way happier being alive, and he accepts this even more. He walks up to Chaozu and thanks him for saving his life, even if they are from rival schools. Chaozu replies saying that he knows, and that's why he's the GOAT. That's when Shen gets back up. He dusts himself off, and he sees Chaozu mingling with that Turtle School robot, the one who cost them the tournament. It makes him so angry he could just... Shen tries to fire out a Dodon Paw, but Chaozu quickly freezes him in place again, although he's really starting to feel drained now. Toribot pulls out his capsules to get his shield, as well as pulling out his sword. If it's gonna come down to this... No. Chaozu flies over to Shen and explains to him what happened. Shen's expression starts to change to that of neutrality. So even the Turtle School recognizes the threat of the Demon King still? Yeah, Toribot adds in about his death too, and about how Chaozu saved his life. Well, that makes Shen mad again. Chaozu had the opportunity for them to end the Turtle School's best student after the death of the Demon King, and he just let that go? Chaozu shrugs. That makes Shen even angrier. Tien comes over from all the yelling to inquire what's going on. Oh, hey, Toribot's alive? That's impressive. Did he get the job done? Yup. Damn, okay, that's great then. So, what's the issue? Shen explains how Chaozu just saved Toribot from plummeting to his death. Tien thinks it's fair enough that he did that, if he killed the Demon King. Surely that goes above any scholarly differences, right? Shen just starts screaming. Not even saying anything, just screaming. Then he tells them to GET OUT! You know what? Tien and Chaozu don't need this guy. Not if this is how he's gonna be. Toribot killed King Piccolo. He saved the planet. They didn't have the strength left to do that. So essentially, he saved their lives too. And if Shen's gonna be this way, they're just gonna leave him until he cools off. Toribot offers to let them come with him. It's almost lunchtime and he still has a ton of money, so he can afford to treat his gang as well as these two to a meal. Considering how originally the Turtle School and Crane School styles were one style, maybe if they joined back up with him to a more permanent end, they could usher the full force of Mutaito's fighting style back into glory. But they'll talk about that later. Tien and Toribot start walking away as Chaozu follows, still hovering. Shen does consider what they said, and he could do something dangerous, he could try and go after them, but he'll wait. That's where I'm leaving the part off for now. This has got to be the longest video script I've ever written, and probably the longest video I've ever made, but I hope it's worth it. I also hope I don't take too long with this, because that would suck. I know Piccolo being born might seem kind of contrived, but I wanted to keep him around since he's Toriyama's favorite. Anyway, my back hurts, my stomach hurts, my arm hurts, my head's probably gonna hurt soon. I'm probably gonna get CTE soon, like TN. Take care. Bye.